Welcome everyone, Dr. Mark Keuthan here. Today we're going to explore one of Jesus' most challenging and instructive parables, the parable of the talents found in Matthew 25, verses 14 through 30. This parable addresses themes of stewardship, responsibility, and the importance of using the gifts and opportunities God has entrusted to us. In this session, we'll begin, as always, by reading the parable from 3 different modern Bible translations to help us fully grasp its meaning. We'll then provide a brief explanation of the parable, followed by a more detailed interpretation from a Bible teacher's perspective. So let's start by reading the parable of the talents. Hearing these different versions of the story will, of course, help us appreciate the nuances of the language and deepen our understanding of the story. First, the New International Version. Again, it will be like a man going on a journey, who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. To one he gave 5 bags of gold, to another 2 bags of gold, and to another 1 bag, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. The man who had received 5 bags of gold went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 bags more. So also the one with 2 bags of gold gained 2 more. But the man who had received 1 bag went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I have gained 5 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. The man with 2 bags of gold also came. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 2 bags of gold. See, I have gained 2 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Then the man who had received 1 bag of gold, Master, he said, I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid, and I went out and I hid your gold in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you. His master replied, you wicked, lazy servant. You knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. Well then, you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers, so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. So take the bag of gold from him and give it to the one who has 10 bags, for whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. And throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Next, from the Amplified Bible. For it is like a man who was about to take a long journey, and he called his servants together and entrusted them with his property. To one he gave 5 talents, probably about $5,000. To another 2, to another 1, to each in proportion to his own personal ability. Then he departed and left the country. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he gained 5 talents more. And likewise he who had received the 2 talents, he also gained 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. Now, after a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came and brought him 5 more, saying, Master, you entrusted to me 5 talents. See, here I have gained 5 talents more. His master said to him, well done, you upright, honorable, admirable, and faithful servant. You have been faithful and trustworthy over a little. I will put you in charge of much. Enter into and share the joy, the delight, the blessedness which your master enjoys. And he also, who had the 2 talents, came forward, saying, Master, you entrusted 2 talents to me. Here I have gained 2 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, you upright, honorable, admirable, and faithful servant. You have been faithful and trustworthy over a little. I will put you in charge of much. Enter into and share the joy, the delight, the blessedness which your master enjoys. He who had received 1 talent also came forward, saying, Master, I knew you to be a harsh and hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you had not winnowed the grain. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what is your own. But his master answered him, You wicked and lazy and idle servant. Did you indeed know that I reap where I have not sowed and gather grain where I have not winnowed? Then you should have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I would have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent away from him and give it to the one who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has more will be given, and he will be furnished richly, so that he will have an abundance. But from the one who does not have, even what he does have will be taken away. And throw the good-for-nothing servant into the outer darkness. There will be weeping and grinding of teeth. Finally, from the Message. It's also like a man going off on an extended trip. He called his servants together and delegated responsibilities. To one he gave $5,000, to another $2,000, and to a third one $1,000, depending on their abilities. Then he left. Right off, the first servant went to work and doubled his master's investment. The second did the same. But the man with the single $1,000 dug a hole and carefully buried his master's money. After a long absence, the master of those 3 servants came back and settled up with them. The one given $5,000 showed him how he had doubled his investment. His master commended him. Good work! You did your job well. From now on, be my partner. The servant with 2,000 showed also how he had doubled his master's investment. His master commended him. Good work! You did your job well. From now on, be my partner. The servant given 1,000 said, Master, I know you have high standards and hate careless ways, that you demand the best and make no allowances for error. I was afraid I might disappoint you, so I found a good hiding place and secured your money. Here it is, safe and sound, down to the last cent. The master was furious. That's a terrible way to live. It's criminal to live cautiously like that. If you knew I was after the best, why did you do less than the least? The least you could have done would have been to invest the sum with the bankers, where at least I would have gotten a little interest. Take the 1,000 and give it to the one who risked the most. And get rid of this play it safe who won't go out on a limb, and throw him out into the utter darkness. And now a brief explanation of the parable. The parable of the talents is a powerful story that Jesus tells to illustrate the importance of using the gifts, resources, and opportunities that God has entrusted to us. In the parable, a master is going on a journey and entrusts his property to 3 of his servants. To one he gives 5 talents, to another 2, and to the third 1 talent, each according to their ability. Upon his return, the master settles accounts with the servants. The first 2 servants, who received 5 and 2 talents respectively, go out and invest their master's money, doubling what they were given. The master commends them, calling them good and faithful servants, and inviting them to share in his joy. The third servant, however, out of fear, hides his talent in the ground and returns only what was given to him. The master condemns this servant as wicked and lazy, and orders that his talent be taken away and given to the servant with 10 talents. The parable ends with the unfaithful servant being cast into outer darkness. This parable highlights the themes of responsibility, stewardship, and the expectation that we actively use the resources God has given to us. It serves as a reminder that God expects us to be diligent and proactive in our work for His kingdom, using our talents and opportunities to produce fruit for His glory. And now the Bible teacher's explanation of the parable's meaning. To fully understand the meaning of the parable of talents, we need to consider its context within Jesus' teachings about the kingdom of heaven and His return. This parable is part of the Olivet Discourse, where Jesus speaks about His second coming and the importance of being prepared and faithful in His absence. The Master in the parable represents Jesus, who has entrusted His followers with various gifts, talents, and resources to be used for His purposes until He returns. The talents represent these resources, whether they be spiritual gifts, financial resources, skills, or opportunities that God gives to each of us according to our abilities. The key lesson of the parable is the importance of faithfulness and stewardship. The first two servants are commended not because they received more talents than the third servant, but because they were faithful in using what they were given. They took initiative, worked diligently, and produced a return on the master's investment. Their actions demonstrate the kind of proactive and responsible stewardship that God expects from all of His followers. The third servant, on the other hand, represents those who, out of fear or laziness, fail to use the resources God has entrusted to them. Instead of taking risks and working diligently, this servant chooses to play it safe by hiding the talent in the ground. This lack of initiative and failure to act is condemned by the master, who calls the servant wicked and lazy. The harsh judgment against this servant serves as a warning to us all that inaction and neglect of our responsibilities in God's kingdom can lead to serious consequences. One of the most striking aspects of the parable is the principle that to whom much is given, much is expected. The more resources and opportunities we have, the greater the responsibility we bear to use them for God's glory. The parable challenges us to consider how we are using our talents. Are we investing them wisely and bearing fruit, or are we allowing fear or complacency to hold us back? This parable also emphasizes the joy of faithful service. The master's invitation to the first two servants to share in your master's happiness reflects the joy and reward that come from faithfully serving God. It is a reminder that our efforts in this life have eternal significance and that God takes great pleasure in the fruit we produce for His kingdom. For storytellers, this parable offers a rich narrative for exploring the themes of responsibility, stewardship, and the consequences of our choices. It encourages us to reflect on how we are using the gifts and opportunities God has given us, and challenges us to be proactive and diligent in our service to Him. As you prepare to retell this parable or draw inspiration from it for your own storytelling, focus on its themes of faithful stewardship, the importance of using our talents, and the joy of serving God with all that we have. This story is a timeless reminder that God has entrusted us with much, and He calls us to be faithful and fruitful in all that we do. To conclude, the parable of the talents is a powerful story that challenges us to consider how we are using the resources, gifts, and opportunities God has entrusted to us. As you prepare to share this parable with others, whether in an oral telling or through your own creative work, remember its profound message that God expects us to be faithful stewards, using what He has given us to bear fruit for His kingdom. Thank you for joining me in this exploration. I look forward to seeing how you'll bring the parable of the talents to life in your own unique way, and how its timeless truths will inspire others as it has inspired countless generations before.